All right, you're really excited about kind of where this team is at, the opportunity that's in front of us this week to be at home again. Certainly playing meaningful football this time of year is what you're after in this game is all of that. Reflecting on Saturday's game, it wasn't perfect by any means, but offense, defense, special teams all contributed to it, and offensively. We come out and punt our first drive, and then we don't punt the rest of the game, and are able to put a lot of points up, take advantage of great field position and great opportunities over and over again. Defensively, really, put the screws to them right away and made it really hard for them to get any momentum going. And then special teams, I think we had 177 yards in the return game. I know Dane did fumble that one, but really impactful. Couple, 3 returns in particular. We took the ball away. Again, we took advantage of the turnovers. So all in all, I think a pretty impressive performance by us. Got everybody in the game once again, and those situations don't come around every weekend. So to get everybody in there and really have that last group, be able to put in the end zone, to get them turned over, all those things was great to see. So looking forward to this opportunity. UC Davis is clearly one of the top teams in the league. Big win for them, bouncing back last week against Idaho. Their quarterback really drives them on offense. Pinnock, as a young player, has been very impressive. Going back to that first game, seeing him play against Mercer, you knew that they had something in him, and he's done it with his arm and his legs. Where he's at right now, throwing the football, I think, has continued to improve as far as just his ability to take advantage of all the things, whether it's the short passing game, the deep passing game, and then his ability to do the unscripted and scramble. Running back wise with Fisher and Vargas, those are really explosive guys, and they both right around 6.5 yards per carry. So that in itself is very impressive. They both catch the ball well. Then you look at their receiving core. Batu is certainly one of the better receivers in the league, and they find many ways to get him the football. And he's, just from a straight line speed perspective, is right up there. But he's much more than that. They use their tight ends well. Simpson Zero is certainly come along as of late. He's been doing more and more in the pass game, and then they got a whole host of guys besides those two in the passing game that I mentioned. So a lot for our defense to handle, and they're much different than they would have been last year. Hastings was a completely different quarterback than Pinnock, but credit to them to be able to build their offense around a different version in Pinnock. Defensively, they've suffered some injuries for sure, but I think that's they've been able to deal with that pretty well. I know their safety room, even though they had the loss of Rex Connors, that room is still very impressive. And then you look at the front and all the guys they play, and in '94, I believe it's Syke is 13 and a half TFLs, 7.5 sacks. He's certainly up there as far as the D lineman we've seen this year. So it's going to be a task certainly. Love that we're playing at home. This type of game is what you want again this time of year. So I certainly encourage our crowd to have a great long day getting ready for the game, but really understand that they can and should and will, all those things, make an impact in what that environment looks like on Saturday. So I know we're anxious to get there, but a good week of work ahead of us to get us ready.
D-line wise, Alec playing in that game. I know Joshua got in there a little bit, and then I guess Paul's status as well. Can you talk about any of those things?
Yeah, Alec was truly a game time decision, and I leaned the fact that he maybe wasn't going to be ready, but then he was, so he got a chance to get out there a bunch. And I know Paul made some really good progress through the weekend, I would say that. And there's still progress to be made. I know Paul's going to do everything he can to be out there on Saturday, and I'll maybe just leave it at that. But I do think there's a strong possibility that he's going to figure that out. And then beyond that, we ended up playing Josiah really in the absence there. Now, that was Josiah's 4th game, so I would think we won't play him now and allow him to continue to redshirt, with the emergence of talent. And I think Zach Black's been pretty steady. Hunter Charbonneau is probably the one that's come on the most in the last couple of weeks. in small doses, but he's continued to improve his consistency. So injury-wise, I think we feel pretty good about where we're at. I think Taki was able to get out there a handful of plays and probably work through that first step of just getting out there and playing in a game and trusting it. I think he missed his first tackle, but then he made a couple after that, and I think his movements looked like he wanted him to. So that reflected in our adjustment, in the back end. Really allowing JJ and Taki to interchange at free safety, and then Bryant to really be able to focus on nickel. It still leaves Tayden as our starter there, but being able to get him off the field through this last month a little bit more has been productive. But we've been 10 in those two spots with 3 guys. Now we'll be 10 in those 2 spots with 4 guys.
Is Taki, is the plan to redshirt him or get him?
He can't.
He can't?
No. I mean, the way it works, he redshirted as a freshman, and for him to medical, he would have to be in a position where he didn't play the rest of the year.
Gotcha, okay.
Yep.
Hayden got Big Sky Player of the Week for defense. Just overall thoughts on his performance on Saturday, especially with the adversity he's kind of been through in his career to have a game like that.
Yeah, he's been really good all season, and that that performance on Saturday with a forced fumble and an interception and the tackles, it just probably shows up in the stat sheet a little bit more, but it's really the type of ball he's been playing all year. He's where he's supposed to be. He's certainly the communicator. I know I saw where he didn't want to be called the quarterback necessarily, but he is that. I mean, that's why we put the communication in his helmet, and just to have him have his presence and have his level of consistency, for our defense and filling big shoes. That's where Rylan Ort was last year. I mean, Rylan Ort didn't miss a play essentially all year at the strong safety position where we needed him. So to have Caden, come back, fill that spot in, and Caden was capable of playing all 3 spots, whether it's free or nickel or strong safety. But we really needed his consistency, his presence, and his playmaking ability. And that's, fortunately on Saturday, the playmaking ability with the interception, the forced fumble, allows, him to get an award like that, I would say. But he's really been this type of player all season.
Coach, 121 points over the last 2 weeks. What stood out to you about the offense's performance during that span?
I think our offense is, you saying our offense?
Yes.
Our offense, I think, has continued to find a way to, work through some things. I would say involve a lot of guys. I think I said that on Saturday night. I think that's where we've evolved is, even Justin being able to spread the ball out and trust more guys, I think has been a big piece to it. I think our running game, whether it's been both of them, whether it's been, one of them between Adam and Julius, I think we're going to continue to cause problems with just those two, their ability. And then that all comes all the way back to our offensive line. I think our offensive line, we're 10 games in, looks a lot different than it did in September. And that's time, that's working together. That's us, figuring things out and how to put them in the best position. But, I think they've been really steady, in particular through the last stretch of games.
The partnership with the American Indian Council, I guess, just how that significance of that and how that's kind of come about.
Yeah, we've had these theme games, so we've been able to lean into the military appreciation. I know on the basketball side, they've done a good job, working with this themed opportunity with the Native American side of things, and for us, being able to do more, recognize, wear different decals on our helmets that would reflect that. And then we're going to go over to the American Indian Hall tomorrow on campus and get some education too. Because it's one thing to have a theme game. It's one thing to maybe change your appearance, your look, whether it's your jersey or your helmet. But do you really understand what you're representing? And that's the biggest piece for me. So, our state certainly has a strong Native American presence, and it means so much to different places across the state of Montana. So for us to be able to, again, shine the light on, that heritage and really honor that heritage is what this opportunity is all about.
Coach, down on the field, it seemed like the guys, after watching the film, said there's a lot more they need to correct. How's that mindset kind of, you think, pushing them forward into this next game, despite, they could be on riding a high off a 66-point performance?
Well, I think it's separating one game to the next. It's being able to come in here on Monday morning and watch the film, be coached, and that's the one thing I told them after the game. They continue, I think, to understand the standard is out there, and they want it. They keep chasing it, and they want it every bit as much as the coaches do for them. I think that's the key, and they've been very coachable. And so coming in and being coached and really truly seeing the things that we can get better at has been the mindset every week. And making it again about the opportunity versus the opponent. I spoke to that, and now we're in a position where the other team we're playing has everything to play for too. We haven't had that maybe the last couple games or whatever, but we continue to have so much to play for. That's what it has to be about. So, I guess the continued commitment by our guys to say, hey, we're at a certain point, recognize where we started, and where how far we've come, I guess, but then recognize there's more out there for us. And I think we just got to continually communicate that to them, but I think more so they recognize it.
Seth Johnson, any update on him?
Yeah, he'll be able to go. I think it was precautionary, really midweek, that holding him back would be the best thing for this particular game. And I feel like he'll be full strength here.
And then Dakari mentioned kind of UC Davis liking to motion a good amount. Can you speak to just that and their scheme?
Yeah, they do a great job. Coach Plow is an offensive guy. He's their play caller. It's one of those offenses that you cut through it. They don't do a lot, but it looks like they do a ton. And their presentation from one week to the next changes. They really force you as a defense to be disciplined with your eyes, communicate, and those things are going to be at a premium on Saturday night because they have playmakers all around. They're not a team that you can say, well, if we take this one guy out, we can have success. No, you got to really defend their scheme and understand that we're going to see things on Saturday that we probably haven't seen on film from a presentation perspective, but it's going to be the same types of plays. And I know you get to where they've played 8, really 9 games now. That's a huge volume, and they're different than they were last year with their personnel certainly. But it was the same thing last year, meaning, okay, we're playing them late in the season. There's going to be things we see for the first time that we got to be able to be disciplined and defend. So our build through the week, being able to show all our guys the possibilities that we think could happen, that's a big part of it. But then our guys have to be disciplined to take on some new things that they maybe see for the first time.
What area have you seen Justin grow the most in since the start of the season through the first 10 games?
Yeah, that's a really good question because I think we still see some growth out there in front of him, but I think just his comfortability with just being the starting quarterback and what that means, and know that you don't need to be perfect. Know that there's other guys around you that can make plays. Who are those playmakers? Being able to spread the wealth. I think he's, these last couple games, decision making has continued to climb. And even what that means for situational football, it wasn't perfect. Taking that sack on first down after the long return, and then it was a 0-yard gain, I think, and then we took a sack on a screen the next play. I mean, even that 2-play sequence, okay, there's a learning opportunity. That's what I've appreciated about him each week is he knows there's more out there for him. And he's a reflection of a lot of guys on our team, or most guys on our team, real hungry to keep improving. But I think his passing ability has been steady. That has not been a flash in the pan. His ability to make the unscripted plays has been steady. Again, it hasn't been a flash. His ability to protect himself is still a work in progress, I would say. And I think his leadership certainly, and what that presence of all the things of where he would have been in August to now is maybe what's increased the most.
You spoke to it, but just a night atmosphere, a nationally televised game, probably going to be pretty cold in late November. Just what kind of advantage do you hope Saturday brings for
Well, it's always better to play at home. Our crowd will dictate a lot of the advantage. The temperature piece is the temperature piece, but our crowd be able to create noise, in particular when they're on offense. That's where the advantage is gained. So the crowd has to make that decision to want to do that. We have to be playing to a level that they want to do that too. I know it works both ways. So, Davis went up to Missoula last year, late in the year, and found a way to win. So it's not like this is this completely foreign opportunity for them. But we have to create a situation both, and again, as fans choosing to show up and really make a difference, but then we have to be able to inspire them with our play. And that advantage can be gained through that. So anxious for the opportunity. I think, these games that, the Big Sky continues to get, on the ESPN family of networks are great opportunities to showcase our conference, and obviously this is one for us to showcase who we are as a football program and who we are as a fan base and all that. So it's obviously my encouragement to get as rowdy and loud and all that as possible.
The Davis defense, I know you talked about schematically offense, but how has the defense looked differently since Rex Connors went down?
Well, he's a phenomenal player, so that's a missing piece to it, but they put in the next guy and continue to play. I think that's they've dealt with a lot of injuries on both sides of the ball, and they appear to be a program that has good depth and again good youth. They were a senior-laden team last year. We were there on senior day, and we ran by all those parents and kids as we walked out. There must have been 30-plus of them. So credit to Coach Plow is my point for having a program that's developing guys from the ground up. I know they have some impactful transfers, but it's mostly a next guy up mode. And then when you have that, you don't want to see a guy like Connors go down, but you know that there's another guy waiting in the wings to be able to take over. So he was a really good player, though. And you look back at last year's game, I mean, he was really good against us last year. Whatever percentage that's maybe changed them, it hasn't changed their scheme and what they want to do necessarily. And they defended us really well last year. I know we snuck a punt return in there and we got to 30, but we got to 30 and we kind of stopped. And that was a credit to how they defended us.
The last two teams, kind of a lot of man-to-man. Is this team similar?
They're much more variable. I'll say that. Variety of fronts. They're in and out of pressure. Their disguise and how they present that is as good as anybody we've seen to this point. Their ability and want to put their corners and their safeties in man-to-man situations is there, but it's not an every play affair by any means. So I think being able to recognize coverage, being able to recognize pressure, much taller task against a team like this than maybe the last couple teams we've faced.
Coulter, what do you have?
Hey, Coach, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
You mentioned Penix. Does he remind you of anybody that's in the league right now that you've matched up against over the last couple of years?
I don't know that he does. I say that. I mean, he's a young player with a bright future, but who he is now is a, very impressive guy. To go all the way maybe to Barry would be a little bit of that's maybe too early to say that, but he's got that kind of combo where you better corral him in some way, somehow. You better cover guys, because if he sees open guys, he's going to be able to connect with them. Some of his most impressive plays have been these. How in the world did he get out of that position, scramble? And then, I think when guys on the perimeter think they have him dead to rights, he's able to run around them. But he's a pass-first guy at the same time, and that's what Barry was. Barry was I'm gonna run around, I'm gonna extend plays, but I'm a pass-first guy. So I don't know. He's not there yet. That was a long time coming for Barry to establish who he was. But, stylistically, I think he's similar, and it's such a contrast from Hastings. Hastings was sharp, smart, accurate, all those things, but you didn't have to go in that game worried about pocket movement or anything. So that's a complete flip from, the team that we would, the offense that we would have had to defend last year.
And that was my next question, was what do you think of just Coach Bob's ability to sort of evolve offensively? Because he has been just totally different than Mason.
Yeah, there's enough similar elements, but then it's really leaning into who you have at quarterback. I mean, that's the mark of a good offense, that you have an offense and you can shift it, to your players, in particular your quarterback skill set. And there's enough skill around him that it doesn't need to be all about him by any means. So yeah, they've done a really good job of evolving. You look back a couple weeks ago when he didn't play against Northern Colorado. They were similar, but they weren't quite the threat without him. So I know he's really good, and he's got to be the focal point, but he can't be your everything. But when he needs to be contained, we got to do a good job of that.
And I guess we'll see now that he's the entrenched starter there. He keeps on doing multiple sports, but just the concept of a two-sport athlete. Can you imagine having your starting quarterback playing a different sport in the spring?
Well, if they're good enough, you figure it out. The whole thing, a lot of kids want to play two sports in college, and then they realize playing one is really hard. But if you're talented enough, I've been around a few that have done it. Quarterback, you'd really have to be creative with how you manage a schedule like that. But if you're good enough that you can do it all, and you're at a particular university, the coaches will figure it out. I'll say that.
Well, speaking of offensive evolution, how have you seen your offense evolve this year? And how much do you think, how much more comfortable do you think Coach Trubeck is with the personnel, and also the personnel just with his leadership on the offensive side?
Yeah, I think we are continuing to find ways to spread the ball around. I think our offense this year, in a 10-game shot, we are stressing teams more in the passing game, and that's not just a Justin versus Tommy perspective. It's what Pete's been able to bring to us. I think our numbers reflect that. We're right around, I think, short of 230 maybe in the rushing game, and just short of 220 in the passing game. I think that's the balance that I personally would like to achieve, where our attempts would lean to the run game, but from a yardage perspective, we can get it done both ways. And I think what Pete's continued to do this season is continue to craft things towards Justin. Certainly, getting connected with Matt Smith in the run game, and what can we do there, but just, okay, what does Justin do well, and how can we continue to enhance his play? And I think a lot of that credit goes to Pete, and just where we're at now versus certainly where we were at leaving camp.
I know you touched on it. The last year's game against Davis was so crazy and back and forth. What is there a lesson you learned there to take into this year, even not even back on last year?
Well, I think the two teams are quite a bit different. Again, the losses on both sides were significant. But I think what you look back and say for us, like offensively, is we can't become one-dimensional against this team, and we did in part because we got a lead, but we weren't able to put that game away offensively because we didn't, I think, throw it enough as the game went along. I know this defensively, if you think you got them backed in the corner, you better keep punching. I think that was the biggest thing last year. I mean, the different set of playmakers, some of the same, but this team is not going to go away. So, depending on how the game flows, it flows, but, if we expect a 60-minute game, I think that's probably the biggest thing looking back at last year, just looking at two programs that have, I think, good winning mindsets and a bunch of players that expect to win. No one's going to run away and hide for sure. So I think there's things to be taken schematically to some degree from last year, but it's just, hey, we got to really appreciate who this opponent is.
You mentioned just the big matchup in Bozeman, but just putting yourselves in this position and being able to navigate these last couple of months to make these next several weeks, big time games that everybody's paying attention to. What are your thoughts of your team's ability to just do that?
Well, we knew those opening games would be challenging, but it wouldn't write the story. I think that was probably the biggest thing. And we certainly shouldn't have lost or whatever that second game, but we did, and that was just a reality. So what do we do moving forward? Understand just that game did not define us back at the beginning of September. We need to continue to define who we are. And, I think through the non-conference, I don't know that we had entirely done that by any means. And then, conference-wise, understand we're going to, get tested each week. I think, we're going to get everybody's best shot, all of that. But really, again, to make it about the opportunity that we have to get better ourselves. And that's what I've really appreciated about this team. You can say it all you want as a coach, but I think our guys have embodied that. They've lived it. And here we sit. We've been able to rattle off 8 in a row, and we've positioned ourselves to play a meaningful football these last couple weeks of the regular season. And everything for us that we would like to achieve is still out there for us. And we've been fortunate now all 5 of these years to be positioned to play meaningful football in November. So that means we've got a lot of guys that have experienced the ups and downs potentially of a regular season and know that one game does not make or break you. And consistency is what it is all about, and being able to show up every week. And that's not just Saturday, that's showing up on Monday, ready to go, ready to prepare. So this team, as much as any of the teams that we've had, has really embraced that. So that's credit to our older guys, it's credit to our coaches, but it's credit to all these young guys, and just, hey, they recognize what's in front of them.
Last one I saw that Brent Vigen is one of the highest rated offensive linemen in the country right now. Massive progress for him, so what can you say just about his growth throughout the season?
Yeah, I think we anticipate that he could be a really productive guy. I know coming into fall camp, we got 6 guys that we think could start. Who's going to be the 5? Braden was in that conversation whether he was going to be in or out of it. Burke goes down. Braden's in that conversation. His first game starting is against Oregon, and that's a baptism by fire, I suppose. But he went out there, and I think he felt like, okay, I belong. And from that point forward, he's a super competitive kid that works his tail off, and I think is ultra conscious of what can I do to get better. And then when you combine that with the tools that he has, his length and athleticism, although the weight isn't quite there yet, is what you're looking for. And again, his intelligence, his competitiveness for a young guy is probably beyond what most normal redshirt freshmen are. So. He's been really steady, and then you give credit to Cedric Jefferson, who really maybe sees himself as a left tackle, but then having to play right tackle, and that's been a work in progress for Cedric too. And Cedric played his best game this past weekend, and he's continued to get better and better. So, can't say enough about those 2 guys, let alone the guys in the interior that have played a bunch. So Braden's been very impressive, and we need him to keep ascending like he is.
Anything else? Okay. Thank you, Coach.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep. Justin's good.